Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. Uh, Today we're going to be talking about something that I talked about in my previous video, which was academic writing. Now, academic writing, right? Writing in general, actually. Let's talk about that first. The point of writing is for you to communicate, right? If I'm talking to you, you talk to me, communication. Um, Writing is just so that I don't have to speak when I communicate to you. Main point of writing is communication. I feel like that is sort of a given. Obviously, the communication can vary, whether it's communicating a message via artistic writing, creative writing, or just information through like a text message or an academic paper, communicating facts. The entire point is to write, to communicate. On to subtopics for our conversation for today. We're going to talk about formatted writing first. We're going to talk about the pros of formatted writing. The main pros that I can think of for formatted writing and academic writing and just writing in general, I guess, is that you know what to look for in specific sections. An example would be like an abstract in a research paper. It tells you exactly what you need to know, and it's really quick. And if you were looking for like the immediate results of what came of it, you just go down to the results section. These things make it super easy to get the information that you're specifically looking for super quickly. It doesn't take that much effort. If you know what you're looking for, you will be able to find it super easily, super quickly. Um, if papers weren't formatted, then if you wanted to like, an example would be like get a summary of the going back to the research paper, if you wanted to get a summary of the research paper that you were reading, they might have it much further down than being like one of the top sections inside the overall paper. So, in that sense, formatted writing is great. Makes it super easy to find things and gives you a little bit of structure, and it's a little bit easier to create things if you can just fit things into boxes and place information into said boxes, and then you're done. Cons of formatted writing. Oh, I should also state that um, my main background in academic writing and writing in general is for scientific purposes. I am a neuroscience major, so most of what I've read and written in college has been for science. I've done very little creative writing in college. I did a little bit last semester, but not that much. I just wanted to preface that, which is why most of my examples are going to be from science. But there are other uh, styles that I've also done, which is why it's not just about science. On to cons of writing. I feel that in a lot of academic writing, research papers, stuff like that, articles, journals, I find that formatted writing is sometimes restrictive in a creativity sense. I find that whenever you place a format for people to write their work into, it stops them from adding anything, any touch of personal flair. An example would be the APA asking you to write in a specific way, or just generally journals and publishers not putting your work up if you don't have a dedicated abstract, methods, results sections labeled such and so. Although I understand why, I think that it's still a con. I understand why you don't have it more free flowing, but it's still very restrictive in the creative sense. Main point that we're going to go on to now is going to be on language usage. First point that we have here is jargon. Depending on the topic that you're actually trying to research, jargon can be something that is either not an issue at all or like the biggest issue possible. I've read many papers where I start reading, read the abstract, and I read it and I'm like, okay, this paper is going to be super easy. and I'll be done with it really quickly. And then I read it, super easy, fun read, done, easy. And then there are other papers where jargon is like the main issue. Like in the abstract and introduction, those two, jargon is the biggest issue that you'll have in understanding a paper, especially when like they have a bunch of abbreviations that they will list out in the abstract and introduction, and then like you have to remember those abbreviations so that when you go back or go through the actual article or the paper in general, you have to remember them, and then if you don't remember them, you have to go all the way back and remind yourself of what the abbreviations actually mean. Yeah, that's my biggest issue with jargon. Another issue, or not necessarily an issue, or I should also say that jargon is sometimes a good way, is sometimes a good thing. Although I understand that sometimes jargon is difficult to understand, having a word that summarizes multiple words in one makes the paper easier to read, especially for people who are already in the field and aware of what the jargon means. Things that they can get through it faster and easier. But it does make it slightly less accessible to the person that doesn't have a career in the field or things like that. On to the next subtopic of language usage. We're going to talk about formality. To a certain degree, I think that formality is fine. Formality is a must in some cases as well, depending on who you're talking to. That leads me on to a wider topic that I might discuss in a later video, which is formality as a whole. But I think that's a completely different thing that I don't need to worry about right now. Maybe I'll get into it in another video. Formality to a certain degree is fine. I think that the main issue is that it sometimes leads to being or feeling borderline robotic to read. I think that when you read a paper and you you read a paper and you read somebody using unnecessary words just for the sake of formality and trying to seem less casual, sometimes I feel like it's overdone. I think there's a difference between using words to get to the point of what you're saying, or trying to be more descriptive, and using words just to fill up a desired character amount, or just trying to make your writing seem better. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen in enough articles for me to like mentally like check while I'm reading, is what they're saying relevant for me to know, or is it just nonsense? I feel like also in talking about formality, being able to add your emotional state here and there would make papers feel much more alive and remind us that the people who wrote the papers are in fact humans. Because sometimes I read papers and I think it doesn't necessarily feel like a person wrote this. Not necessarily that it was written by AI or something, but it feels that the amount of formality that people put into it, this is going on to like people who spend too much time like adding unnecessary words or things like that. The people who do things like that make the paper feel as if it was unorganically generated. Not that it was AI per se, but that it's like comparing a rock to a tree. Whenever I see a rock, I'm like, okay, that's a rock. Although it's fine that it's a rock, you don't necessarily always want a rock. You want it to sometimes be a tree, because the tree has different attributes and qualities, and trees, although there's a lot of different variations of rocks and other things like that, and there are a lot of exceptions with rocks as well, trees have differences that are vastly different from each other, that are like visually, instantly you can tell that there's a difference in between it. Whereas rocks, it's much harder to, and a lot of the times when people use too much formality, they just become rocks. They don't have any variation in what they're saying, because all they're worrying about is formality, and all they're worrying about is seeming to be correct instead of just letting their data show it. And I feel like if we were able to add human emotion, it would make a lot of papers seem much more like trees than rocks. At the end of the day, I understand that every article that I read, every book that I read, every paper that I read was written by someone. Because there's an author there, there's a name there. I can look them up and find a picture of them and see that this person spent time writing this paper. However, sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And I think that's because of the fact that in a lot of academic writing, especially in scientific writing, they expect you to almost let the work show for itself. And yeah, I think that's super important. I think that overshadowing the work that you found or the discoveries that you made with just you being there is not a great thing. But I also want to feel like somebody actually wrote something here, not that it was just figured out or discovered. It's sort of hard to explain that. Yeah. Next thing I'm going to go on to is racism and classism. I understand that this is slightly off topic, but it's somewhat relevant to my previous point of formality, and it's the reason why we have so much formality. And I'll get into another example later, but oftentimes people are seen as lesser than for using different dialogues that are other than the like northern urban white based way of speaking. And this is not necessarily just like an American thing, because I know I use northern and urban and white based. This can apply in multiple different countries. Most of the time, when people who are from more rural areas go and like do research in urban areas, I find that they're often not taken as seriously. If they are a minority, they're not taken as seriously. This is just in general. If they're a minority, they're not taken as seriously. Yeah, pretty much. If they're a minority, they're not taken as seriously because bigotry. And the scientific department is no different. In academic writing, it's no different either. In a lot of spaces, being a minority of any sort and being a visible minority at that makes you seem lesser than by a lot of people, even if they don't mean to see you as lesser. Oftentimes that's how it comes across when they speak to you, sometimes without them realizing and sometimes definitely with them realizing. I used the example here when you use other dialogues other than like northern urban white based ways of speaking. People see you as lesser, especially in the United States. If you hear somebody speak in a country accent, even for a lot of Southerners, if they hear somebody speak with a more Southern accent than they do, their almost first immediate thought is this person isn't as smart as I am, or this person may not be as educated as I am. Sometimes that is the case, but sometimes it's not the case. And I don't feel like judging somebody based off of their dialogue is a way of determining their level of intelligence. And another example that I have here written down is how in medieval Europe, lords considered cursing to be a very serf/peasant thing to do, because of the fact that serfs and peasants did it often. So they distanced themselves by bashing other lords for cursing and passed it down for generations and generations to even the American culture right now, where there are laws dictating whether or not you can curse in public. And technically you cannot curse in public because you can be arrested for that, but besides the point. It's also ingrained in our culture that if somebody curses often, they are less mature, or less educated. It's an assumption that a lot of people make just based off of the words that people use, even though they often don't have proof of said person being less intelligent. It's just because they heard them speak in a specific way that they feel so. That's all I have written down. There were a lot less subtopics than I thought there were, but it's still a pretty long video because the main topic was pretty big. And I didn't speak as fast as I typically do, I think. I don't know. We'll see in post-editing. But, yeah. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. There are a lot of videos, there are a lot of good videos, but you chose my video anyway, and thank you for that. Today's question, when was the last time you used a hammer for something? I want to know. Like if you want to, dislike if you want to. Hope you have a good day, night. If it's night, I hope you have good sleep, and yeah, good luck. Survive.